Hey, Jonathan. Good to
Okay,
see you.
nice to be with you.
Yeah, this is Jonathan Carswell. Jonathan, for those of you who I don't know who wouldn't know you, but in
Oh,
case someone out
most
there
people.
who's watching doesn't know you, who are you?
Yes, so I work with a ministry called tenofthose.com. Our passion is to get good books that hold to the Bible read by as many people as possible. So I'm involved with the team that are in that ministry.
Yeah, so you're obviously, dare I say this, you're not American, but
No,
I
I've got
think,
a cultured accent. That's what you
yeah,
meant. And yeah, but I'm living in the States at the moment. I'm in Chicago. And 10 of those began just over a decade ago in the UK. And last August, my family and I moved to the States to set up 10 of those in the US. Yeah.
yeah, that's great. So Jonathan and I have known each other for a number of years now. Share, we run similar type ministries. Matthias Media does something similar, but we really try to partner together because we want the same thing. In particular, want to see here in the U.S., of course around the world, but a U.S. kind of a raising of the evangelistic temperature, among other things. But it's something we've talked about over the years, and I think we'll probably come back to that in a few minutes, Jonathan. But I'm really grateful for your ministry and your desire to help people get good resources to do gospel work through those. Maybe just start out with one of the things I've been getting calls quite a bit from people who've gone through our Vine Project workshops saying, we bought into this philosophy of ministry that you guys have been saying and Trellis and Vine, but what does Vine work look like now? I mean, our trellises have changed significantly, or they've dried up, they've gone away. So I'm just talking to some friends I have in ministry around the world and asking them that question. What are you hearing, maybe at your own church or from your friends in ministry? What are they doing now in response to just what's going on for gospel work?
Yeah, well, so I'm from a place in the UK called Yorkshire, and we're known to be blunt, so I'll just be blunt. My feel that I'm getting from the people that we're interacting with is if evangelism was on their agenda previously, then they're spending time and energy and effort rethinking how they can do it. And perhaps it doesn't come with much surprise that if evangelism wasn't on their agenda, they're just kind of hunkering down, hoping we can get through this and out the other side, and then things can start again. Now, okay, sweeping comments and generalizations, but that does seem to be what's happening. I'm certainly encouraged by those who are thinking through, okay, something's got to change now. We can't run our usual course or events or even the sort of giveaways that we would normally do if a guest came to our church on a Sunday and we gave them a bag. Those sorts of things have got to change. And I think we've really got to be creative. This is
Yes.
These are different days, and we need to get the gospel out there. And
Yeah.
so,
What are you hearing? Yeah, what are you hearing about how some practical things that people are trying to get the gospel out there?
well, there's obviously things that are related to the coronavirus. So in the UK, a tract was developed, a little sort of Christian leaflet that was evangelistic, using the coronavirus as kind of the topic. Well, okay, the UK is small, so these numbers are small, but a third of a million of those have gone out in the last
Wow.
6 weeks or so. Well, if a third of a million, even half of those are perhaps even read to some degree, that's a good number. Um, in a couple of weeks' time in the UK is a sort of Memorial Day with regards to the world wars. Somebody just wrote to me about 10 minutes ago saying, how about we could get a leaflet about that topic into care homes around the UK? Because these were the generation that fought in those wars. How could we connect with them? And those sorts of things. We're also looking at perhaps distribution of magazines and door-to-door, where perhaps previously we wouldn't have considered door-to-door, but that's our only method right now. I think also, though, on an individual level, people need to be thinking, well, what can I do? This isn't to blow our trumpet. It's just something that we had a chance to do. A few doors down from us, they just had a new baby, and they had a little sign saying that, I can't remember his name, but little so-and-so has just been born. Well, we put together a little sort of care package for them, and had some sweets and whatever. And a children's book that had the gospel in. So you guys at Matthias do the activity book for Who Will Be King, which is 2 ways to live for kids. What a great way. Maybe you could get a bundle of those and put packages together for the homes round and about you, and a way that perhaps we wouldn't normally, but now, no, everything's off limits. You can, there are no limits now. You can just, you can connect with your neighbors like that.
That's what I'm hearing too. It's interesting. As much as we think the barriers have gone way up, there's so many barriers have gone way down. And so thinking about, I mean, of hearing people, of texting, our church is running a live stream, and just the barrier to say, hey, do you want to come to church with me? And they kind of feel awkward, and where do I go? And I'll meet you. Now we should work through those, but we don't have to now. We can just send them a text, and they can say, hey, it starts at 9:15 this Sunday. I would love for you to join in. Maybe we could talk at 11 o'clock after. I'd just love to hear any thoughts you might have. And
I think if it's done in a sort of winsome, genuine way, hey, we're going to be watching. You'll need to bring your own coffee, but that guarantees it'll be good, type thing. And you just make them smile, connect with them, and even if they say, I wasn't able to, don't worry, we'll be in the same spot next week. And there's lots of opportunities like that we would never have previously perhaps engaged with.
Yeah, my friend in ministry, Sean Martin, he gave me this years ago, and I keep repeating it. He said the only parameters, the only limitations on gospel work is faithfulness and creativity. We will always be faithful, but other than that, the limit is just as creative as you said. We can be as creative as we can be. Leaving a little packet with a little Who Will Be King, or a little any of the booklets you guys have. And so I know it's been challenging to me to not just write off, I can't see people in person. And so I like your challenge. Just do one thing. What there's one thing I can do to advance the gospel. So that's on the individual level. What about the church level? You kind of said kind of bluntly that sometimes we've either gone, those who already understand evangelism and want to be part, they're doing something. I feel on the church level, I'll be a little bit blunt, that, I mean, so many churches understandably and helpfully are putting tons of content out. But maybe if they took maybe just 10% of that time, I mean, we say this in Trellis and Vine workshops, take 10% of your time as a pastor and train people to multiply the ministry out. What if the churches were to take some of their time and to think evangelistically, not certainly to serve their people, but to try to help serve their people, serve the non-Christians around them? So what are you hearing how churches are doing that?
I mean, taking that idea, I think one of the pushbacks with evangelism that churches will often say is, we want to mobilize our members to do the evangelism rather than corporately run an event or well, fine. Okay, great. How today can you be mobilizing your individuals to be doing it? Because if there was ever a time to do it, it's now. So what are you doing? I would challenge church leaders, and particularly those who sort of govern the money, and say, okay, well, the money that you would normally be spending on, whether it's home group material or discipleship material, that has to be rethought now. Well, what about taking that budget and saying, we will coordinate sending, let's say, 5 evangelistic books to every member that was part of our home group. And it can be done in such an affordable way. Take your 2 Ways to Live booklets. Well, send every member in your church 10 and say, could you this week prayerfully write to 10 friends of yours, your unique circle of friends that perhaps we could never reach, but you as individuals can. Yes. Here it is. It's paid for by the church. Now, could you do it? I think churches need to think through their responsibility of mobilizing individuals. And one of the key ways they can do that is by funding facilitating the distribution of literature. Yeah, I firmly believe that books that point people to Jesus change lives. And if your church believes that, and churches listening believe that, then mobilize your members to do that.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about building trellises, building ministries to build a trellis to support. I mean, we have all sorts of Zoom support groups, and all
Yeah.
really helpful. But what if we had a Zoom group to say, we're going to help each other. We're going to pray and hold each other accountable to trying something. So every Thursday at 6:30 p.m., we're going to jump on and say, how did it go this week? We can't control outcomes. God grants the
Yeah.
growth, but we can water and we can sow it. And I need you and you need me to pray for each other, to give me ideas and to keep bolstering me along. Rico Tice, we both know and love, talks about that pain point, right? Pushing through the pain point to do this, and how much better it would be if we set up little support groups to do something like that.
And I'm just thinking about this now, but what about setting up a sort of Zoom ask any question?
Yeah.
Like taking sort of the Christianity Explored, if you could ask God one question, what would it be? And get your members to invite their neighbors and friends and say, look, you can ask any question. You don't even have to have your camera on. So we won't know kind of who's asking it. You ask anything, and our minister will do his best from the Bible to explain what we as Christians believe. I mean, there's loads of things that we can do. Like you say, if we're faithful, let's be creative. Give it a go.
Yeah. One of the, we know we have lots of connections to shut-ins or people in nursing homes who are really isolated now. And so we were able to get care packages in. And so one of our dear saints who's gone before us, John Chapman in Australia, wrote a little book. I love the title, called Making the Most of the Rest of Your Life. And he wrote it when he was 78 years old, and it's in large print and it's short, and thinking about getting that into nursing home, maybe a stack of 3 to your Christians,
let's
and
take that
they
as a
can
good
hand it out.
Great idea. Let's take that as an example. Why not call up your local care home, ask to speak to the manager and say, look, we as a church want to see how we can help love and care for. And what we'd like to do is we'd like to give everyone a care package. And, maybe you send them a candy bar and a little handwritten note saying, dear Fred, we're thinking of you. We know it's lonely. We know it's difficult, but we want to say we love you. Here's some candy to enjoy and a short book that you might enjoy. It's in nice large print. It just clearly explains the gospel. It's thin. Send it and get 100 or 200 into that care home with a personal note. Powerful way to do it.
And on the flip side of that, I know you've got 2 young children, and I'm sure what a great opportunity time now, right, to bring them up in the Lord. And I know one of the favorite books in our house is Everyone a Child Should Know, even the whole series, teaching them Christian biographies, a great time. But it's also subtly teaching them about, all these, many of these great people you highlight in that book. They're evangelistically minded. They're missionaries. They're people who sacrifice. And so you're doing 2 things. You're expanding the gospel down into your family, but also training them to be evangelistically minded, even at this young age.
I think one of the most frightening things about being a parent is how quickly your kids copy what you do, both good and bad. And one, we have a responsibility to share the gospel to them, to evangelize them. But they are watching and they are seeing how we respond to this situation. And they are seeing whether we talk about Jesus with our neighbors when they pass, or whether we send a care package and why we send a care package, these sorts of things. So to be an example to them, one, to evangelize them, but also to show them, okay, once you put your trust in Jesus, people who love Jesus and live with him as Lord want to tell others about Jesus. And they are picking that up all the time. So in what ways can we share the gospel with them, but in what ways can we be an example of sharing the gospel as well? And biography is a really good thing to do, to engage with, because it shows what God does with lives that are dedicated to him, and great examples of people who've gone before.
Yeah. So, we're thinking creatively. What would you say, maybe in the last few minutes here, that you would want every church leader to think through how to do something to mobilize? I think we've already given a few ideas, but is there any kind of thing that maybe you've learned from churches in the UK? Now you've been in the US long enough now to know that some things translate, some things don't.
Definitely. In some ways, who am I to kind of say what people can and can't do? I'm just a novice, trying my best. But I think we each need to be looking at, well, who are the 3 or 4 people that I'm regularly praying for, that I'm regularly connecting with, And how often am I not just saying, oh, I'm a church worker or our church are doing this, but how often am I in conversation taking people to Jesus?
Yeah.
And as I take them to Jesus, how can I take them to the cross? Paul Williams, who has written a great little book called Intentional, which is a short book on how we can be purposeful every day to be sharing the gospel. They're the two things he says: take people to Jesus, take people to the cross. So I'll be saying, church ministers, church staff, how are we doing that today? And then how are we enabling our church congregation to do that? Not just say our church have got a Zoom that you can tap into, or how are we taking people to Jesus?
Yeah.
And, a challenge for me, our neighbors, we had kind of a tea in the garden yesterday, with a good 6 feet between us all. But did I talk about Jesus with them? Did I get them to the cross with them? Now, okay, we're building bridges, but bridges must be crossed if they're going to be of any use. So that would be my challenge. That's what I'm trying to do each day. How can I talk about Jesus? How can I talk about the cross?
And who are you praying for? I really appreciate your emphasis on that. Am I praying for non-Christians? Am I praying for those bridges? And I'm praying for the cross those. It's interesting. I had a very similar thought. I've been reading this a young group of guys, this book called Tactics by a guy named Greg Coco. It's really good. And he talks about putting the pebble in the shoe idea, but I've kind of translated it in my own kind of trying to hold myself accountable to this, of saying every conversation, especially with non-Christians, can I just try to say one distinctly Christian thing? It doesn't have to do, as Coco says, the whole thing at that point.
Yeah.
But can I say one Christian thing? It's doable. It's accountable, and I think it works in that sense. If I can say one uniquely Christian thing, I can at least say I've tried.
Yeah. Well, it's the salt and light, isn't it, in the conversation? Yeah. In what way can I, even a little grain of salt, how can I drop it in? And you do that once, okay, it might not make a big difference. You do that over a friendship of 2 or 3 weeks, 2 or 3 months, 2 or 3 years. There's a lot of salt going into that conversation.
And I found that it's made my conversations still sincere. It's usually like over a sports event. A couple of the non-Christians I know, mostly around my kids' sporting events, which aren't going on now, but when they get back up, it's usually over a sporting event. It gives me a goal to get into the conversation to achieve without making it contrived. I still want to listen to him. I want to talk about the weather and sports, but I also have a goal that I can achieve. So I appreciate you throwing that out there, because that applies to us as ministry leaders. It applies to us as everyday Christians, as fathers, as husbands. And I appreciate your thoughts there.
And just one final thing. I mean, people often push back and, oh, you're just kind of guilting us into evangelism. Not at all. If Jesus Christ died for us and we are now living with him as Lord, why wouldn't I tell people about that? It's not out of guilt, but out of passion and love and compassion for those who are perishing.
Absolutely.
So it's not
1 Peter 2, right?
Exactly.
You know, it's that 1 Peter 2 stuff, that he's delivered us out and into this great realm, and I am done. He's done that so I can declare his mercies to all people. That's a good way to end it. Hey, Jonathan, I really thank you for your time. Tell everybody where all these resources that you mentioned are available. Where?
Yeah, so some of them I've mentioned, they're from Matthias Media, so get them on your website. But our website is 10ofthose.com. It's available in the US and the UK. And we just want to try and get good stuff out and point people to Jesus.
Great. Thanks, Jonathan, for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks.